There's a huge update, and at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Lauren Conlin will be joining the channel. She's been one of the leading experts on the case, tracking down hidden leads, debunking false narratives, and exposing information no one else had. It's going to be intense. Questions will be answered live, and maybe we'll finally uncover what really happened to Celeste. But back to Gina and her dizzy self, because this latest move, it truly takes the cake. Gina's pulled a lot of stunts, but this one might be her most unbelievable yet. Let's get into it. Ready to laugh? Then welcome to the Gina Han Insanity Comedy Show. Here's the thing. Gina had a type, and Diddy had a type, and somehow that type always seems to work in his favor. The man, many say, was an expert manipulator, a master of control, and an emotional brainwasher. Sure, some people might argue he's a good man, but really, where's the proof? Has anyone who wasn't financially tied to him ever come forward to say Diddy made their life better? Not yet. And until that happens, it's hard to buy that narrative. As discussed in last night's live stream, this whole situation is unraveling fast. So let's dive into Gina's letter. It begins, "Dear Judge Subramanian." She writes, probably thinking, well, if Miami made a fool of herself, it's my time to shine. She continues, "I know you're sentencing Sean Combs on Friday, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I saw in the press that letters were submitted by many concerning the sentencing. No one asked me or told me to write this letter, but I felt my voice had to be heard as I was identified as victim number 3 in this case. I understand the charges that were brought concerning me, including accusations of trafficking and prostitution. First of all, Gina, we already know where this is going, but still, no one asked you to write this letter. You're still fighting for a position that no longer exists. Good luck with that." She continues, "I cooperated fully with prosecutors. I met with them 3 times, answered all their questions, and gave them every piece of information and evidence I had, including pictures, videos, and text messages from my phone. During those meetings, I felt pressured to feel like a victim." Wait, did you say you were pressured, or do you now feel pressured? Because that's a big difference. Shut up, Gina. She continues, "I told them I was not, but they insisted that I was. Even when I expressed my truth otherwise, I understand they concluded that I had been trafficked and involved in forced prostitution. I did not agree with that conclusion. I was not trafficked. I did not engage in prostitution with him or others." Honestly, Gina, no one really thought you were a prostitute, and if you were, you weren't charging much because everyone saw those dirty carpets while you danced for the camera like you were auditioning for a Britney Spears comeback. You were trying to prove to Diddy that you were someone worthy of respect, someone who still had his attention. She adds, "That would have been my testimony if I was called to the stand. I was subpoenaed and fully prepared to testify and answer all questions truthfully. But I was informed by my lawyer that I would not be called to take the stand again." And that's where it gets interesting. Diddy's team had every opportunity to call her to testify. If she was truly this pillar of truth she claims to be, the one person who could have saved him, then why didn't they call her? Everyone's quick to question the prosecutors for not using her, but it's not hard to see why. The prosecutors didn't need a witness who could barely hold a consistent story. But the bigger question is this: why didn't his own team call her? Because they didn't want her cross-examined. They knew what would happen the moment she was under oath and forced to face the hard questions. Gina writes, "I want to emphasize that I understand the seriousness of this case and the pain others may feel. But Gina, Judge Aaron isn't sentencing him based on sympathy. He's sentencing him based on aggravating factors, and those factors include his violence. Judge Aaron even mentioned you, or at least victim number 3. Saying that even though you now claim you're not a victim, you already gave a full interview describing the violence you experienced. That's the contradiction that Diddy's team doesn't want to talk about. They know exactly what they're doing, trying to trick the public into seeing Diddy as misunderstood, when this has nothing to do with public opinion anymore. How are they planning to sway Judge Aaron? He's a man of the law, a man of integrity, and no amount of emotional spin will move him. And honestly, I hope Judge Aaron gives Diddy a long sentence. Everything about this case has been shocking, unpredictable, and disturbing. I won't speculate on how long it will be, but you can bet many are praying for the maximum sentence allowed by law. No one is saying Diddy should die in prison, but he needs to be held fully accountable for his crimes. His victims deserve to feel safe. There needs to be a real buffer between him and the outside world for him to truly reflect, to feel the weight of his actions, and maybe, finally, to experience genuine remorse. Because let's be clear, this isn't about Diddy's fame or his music anymore. This is about the violence and who this man truly is at his core. Gina continues, I cannot speak for anyone but myself. In terms of sentencing, I kindly ask you to consider releasing him back to his family. I understand throughout the process he's been cooperative and respectful, including turning himself in. Respectful? Really? What was he going to do? Run? There were 20 federal agents swarming him like locusts. How exactly was that an act of respect? He didn't turn himself in, he got caught off guard. He didn't even know the arrest was coming. But here's the irony. After everything that's come to light, Gina still stands by him, still defends him, still asks for leniency. And that's the part that shows just how deep this manipulation really runs. If your name is Gina Han, then standing 10 toes down for your man might have come just a little too late. The world has been watching, and everyone's talking about it for one reason. Gina Han has written a second letter to Judge Aaron, and this one, without a doubt, takes the cake. Gina has become the definition of a ride or die, showing no fear even at the thought of catching a case or doing time for Diddy. In her latest letter, she accuses the U.S. Attorney's Office of trying to force and manipulate her into claiming she was a trafficking victim, pressuring her to confess to things she insists never happened. These are explosive accusations, and it raises one burning question. How will the South District of New York handle being accused of lying about a federal trial? Because let's be real, accusing the government of fabrication is not something that goes unnoticed. Now, let's get into it. First of all, nobody came to hear you sing, Gina. Let's start with the obvious, Gina's entire statement. Here's the thing, this isn't some dim-witted jury she's dealing with. This is Judge Aaron. This case has moved far beyond the court of public opinion or social media debates. It's not about trending narratives or convincing followers online. There's only one person in that courtroom who truly matters right now, Judge Aaron. And unlike you, Gina, he's actually there. You've spent plenty of time saying you would never show, but let's be honest, you didn't take the stand. Diddy's legal team didn't call you to testify. Everyone around that defense table seemed to know exactly what they were doing by keeping you out of the witness chair. That way, no one could fact-check your claims, no one could verify your words under oath. It's clear, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. Now, let's talk about the real issue here. Gina seems to be missing something critical. The game has changed. Maybe once upon a time, it was about loyalty, love, and image. But that time is long gone. This isn't about whether or not she was trafficked. It's not even about whether Diddy is wrapped up in a RICO case. What's at stake now is much deeper. Abuse, history, and the risk of it repeating. Because the question in front of the court isn't, did he do it anymore? It's, if he's released, what are the chances this man will hurt another woman again? And Gina, that's something you've already answered yourself. Not in a courtroom, but publicly, during your interview with Tasha K. You spoke of pain, of abuse, of the darker sides of what went on behind closed doors. Those words may not have been sworn testimony, but they are powerful aggravating factors, the kind that Judge Aaron will not ignore when deciding whether Diddy deserves to walk free. Many of Diddy's supporters might not fully understand what aggravating factors means. It's not just about the act. It's about the way it happened, the intent, the manipulation, the cruelty behind it. And that's what's being weighed now. Not social media loyalty, not public sympathy, but the pattern of behavior that's finally come to light. It's not about having girlfriends in a modern love story. It's about how that love story played out. Judge Aaron and the Southern District of New York have one clear mission: to protect the public. They don't care who stood by whom, who stayed loyal, or who claimed to hold it down through the chaos. Because at the end of the day, he didn't even want you as his bona fide. You were never his woman. Even if you stood there saying, "I'll be your punching bag, sir," the truth remains, you weren't even his preferred punching bag. That's the harsh reality. The court isn't protecting Gina. It's protecting the women and men Diddy actually wanted close to him. Meanwhile, Gina keeps trying to play Captain Sada Man, desperate to defend someone who left her behind long ago. Anyway, that's the opinion many are whispering, but let's move to Gina's letter itself. Before that, a quick note. If you haven't been following the David and Celeste Rivers case, you might want to catch up.
Anyway, she continues, throughout this process, he has never wanted to reach out to me or make me feel uncomfortable in any way. I believe he will continue to be compliant with the court's conditions upon release. He hasn't reached out, huh? Maybe not directly, but have his lawyers? Because somehow these letters keep finding their way into the courtroom. So really, who's pulling the strings here? She goes on, I understand that accountability is important, and I'm not writing this to dismiss the gravity of the charges or to criticize anyone. I write to express my perspective as a so-called victim. I write to express how I felt during the investigation and trial and how I feel now, waiting to hear the sentence. I felt compelled to share my own perspective honestly. I respectfully ask that you take my words into consideration when making your decision. Thank you for your time and allowing me to be heard. And there you have it. Gina Han, a woman who openly said she didn't mind being hit, stomped, or kicked out. If you don't know what that refers to, go watch the Tasha Tay interview. She described everything that happened to her in vivid detail, and yet she still believes the man who did all that is a good man. And let's be clear, that's her right. She has every right to feel however she wants. But the real question is, are we supposed to let her standards define what's acceptable? Are we supposed to let her idea of love and loyalty dictate what's okay for ourselves, for our daughters, our sons, our children? Because what Gina calls a modern love story is one built on pain, humiliation, and submission. This is a woman who publicly accepted what most would never tolerate: physical and emotional abuse, humiliation at the hands of Diddy, and public disrespect from others like Young Miami, who openly mocked and threatened her. Gina absorbed it all and still believes it's love. But should her opinion matter in court? Should a woman who normalizes her own suffering be allowed to shape how justice is served? I don't think so, and neither, most likely, does Judge Aaron. Because the truth is, Gina doesn't know what a modern love story is. She doesn't know what a good man looks like. She's speaking from a place of emotional dependency, not from clarity or empowerment. Maybe she looks at critics and thinks they don't understand, that they're judging her unfairly. But this is the life she's chosen, the reality she's created for herself. And unfortunately, for both Gina and Diddy, this version of reality, the one built on denial, manipulation, and misplaced loyalty, isn't going to play out the way they think it will. We'll see how it unfolds soon enough. The trial is set for Friday, October 3rd. Until then, all eyes remain on the courtroom and on the final chapter of this explosive story.